Our next speaker is Joël Karamdeep Singh Brierre, who began his relationship with psychedelics as a teenager in an exploratory manner. Marveling at the chance to explore the unexplored, Joël began training with Curanderos in Peru in 2001, where he further pursued these heightened states of awareness. That was good to see. Eventually shifting his focus into a deep and devoted yoga practice, he began teaching yoga and meditation and soon moved on to India to study in an ashram setting in Rishikesh. From there, he traveled all over the world, soaking up knowledge and sharing what he'd learned. He was reintroduced to plant medicine in 2009 while living in the Caribbean and began to incorporate them into his yogic practice. With this combination of knowledge, Joël now leads retreats and workshops around the world on the plant medicine and yogic connection. With over 10 years of teaching and multiple teacher trainings, Joël is certified at 500 EYRT, or do I say ears? EYRT. Please welcome to the stage, Joël Brierre.
Thank you, Mr. Tom. I'm slightly vertically challenged, so I'm going to adjust this mic a little bit. How is everyone? Yeah. Good. Well, lovely to see you all here. As he mentioned, my name is Joël Brierre, and I reside in Los Angeles with my lovely wife here, Ms. Mary. And we're going to talk about 5-MeO DMT. Yeah. So who here has had the pleasure or disdain of experiencing this powerful medicine? All right, a few of us. And who here has experimented or played with the system of yoga? All right, plenty of us. This car can leave you here? Okay, cool. So, a little bit about myself. Actually, you just heard my bio. You don't need to know anything else about me. I'm just going to start talking. We've got 30, yeah?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. All right, so why yoga and 5-MeO DMT? Let's start with what is yoga. Yoga is, quite contrary to Western belief, not a system of exercises to get us more flexible and fit. Yoga literally translates to union. Union with what? Union with our higher selves. Union with God, if you will. Union with Source. Union with the infinite. The fundamental backbone philosophy in yogic philosophy is Atman is Brahman. So by Atman, which is the individual soul, is the same as Brahman, totality, pure source consciousness, the infinite, or God, if you will. So we are the entire ocean in one drop, and we are one drop out of the ocean at the same time. Yoga was made into an 8-limbed path by a sage named Patanjali, somewhere between 300 and 800 BC. Patanjali was kind enough to map out these states of consciousness and basically write out a workbook on the human system, on the human consciousness or human mind. Really the struggle between our consciousness, awareness, and the ego. So for all simplistic senses, we're going to simplify some words down today. When I speak of the word samadhi, we'll be speaking about nirvikalpa samadhi, which is the royal full samadhi, and I will explain exactly what that is momentarily. When we speak of the mind, equal that to the ego, default mode network. There are a lot of different rabbit holes we can go down with this, but I'm going to keep it fairly simple. So, the eighth and final limb of this 8-limbed path of yoga is samadhi. Samadhi is a word for which there is no English equivalent. It has an equivalent or a similar word in many different faiths from around the world. We have nirvana, we have fitra from the Sufis, we have beatific vision from Christian and Catholic theology, we have full samadhi, which would be yogic or Hindu philosophy. Samadhi is when there is a cessation of mind or self-activity and the ego is completely dissolved away and awareness gets to float out with the infinite. Why does this differ from other entheogens? Because many times more than not, this completely gives us a non-dual experience. So by non-dual experience, I mean no more subject-object relationship. There is no you, there is no me, there is no this or that, there simply is. It is nothing to sit and think, oh wow, this is intense. Everything simply is. All infinity, all at the same time. And that is something I had read and studied for a long time in my studies with yoga. And I had a few very, very intense awakening experiences around 10, 11 years ago in India and then in some other countries. And I had never really fully connected them to sub-samadhi or non-abiding awakening experiences. I knew they were momentary Kundalini awakening experiences, but everything didn't quite click until my first full release with 5-MeO. At that moment, I said, aha, okay, I get it. It all started to make sense. Because samadhi is not something we can understand with the human intellect. It is not something our minds have the foundation or capability to even fathom. It is beyond all conceivable notions. We have these filters in our mind that tend to filter in our intake of reality. Different entheogens, I feel, shut down certain filters. 5-MeO shuts them all down and we get the full intake, and it is big. So when all those filters start to go up, just like a lot of different medicines, right as that experience starts to fade, soak in the recollection, soak in the feeling, it can start to fade away like a dream. And that's why we're going to talk a lot about integration and really why I use the system of yoga for this experience. So as I said, in my opinion, a full release on 5-MeO DMT is congruent to Nirvikalpa Samadhi, full cessation of self. And like I said, this is something that is very hard to put into words. It is more than language is capable of. So I'm going to quote someone who is better at language than myself, named Daniel Schmidt. And he's got an excellent little passage here on Nirvikalpa Samadhi that he coincidentally wrote after his first time with 5-MeO DMT. He says, in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, there is a cessation of self-activity, of all seeking and doing. We can only speak about what falls away as we approach it, and what reappears when we return from it. There is neither perception nor non-perception, neither thing nor no thing, neither consciousness nor unconsciousness. It is absolute, unfathomable, and inscrutable to the mind. When the self returns to activity, there is a not knowing, a kind of rebirth, and everything becomes new again. We're left with the perfume of the divine, which lingers longer as one evolves on the path. So I feel like he said it better than I can. So, yes. So why use the system of yoga to work with this? Because in my experience, having a big experience with this entheogen, or really any other entheogen, and not having some sort of system to integrate it in, it just ends up being a peak experience that ends up seeming like a distant dream at some point. So, my wife and I, when we were in, wherever she is, when we were within the continental United States in any law-abiding areas, we are psychedelic integration therapists through the yogic lens. When we work in Jamaica and Mexico and a few other places, we hold our retreats and we work with 5-MeO DMT in combination with the yogic system. So if we were to begin working together, I like to begin using what's known as the 5 kleshas. The 5 kleshas are the 5 root causes of suffering. So we begin about a week or two prior to your experience, and you begin some journaling, starting to really identify what are the root causes of suffering in your life. So the first klesha is avidya. Ignorance. Not ignorance as in stupidity, but ignorance as in ignorance to our own nature as infinite beings. Infinite to our nature as limitless, boundless existence. If we're not aware that we're God, a lot of problems can happen. Secondly, we have asmita, which is egoism. We begin to identify with our persona and our personality. We begin to identify with our assumed identity. In this existence, we've come here to put on a mask and become a human being and play this game. But sooner or later, the mind is bound to take over, and we're bound to take it a little too seriously. And we begin to really identify fully with who we think we are. We can tend to have some problems and some suffering there, because then we can take things a little too personally. We can get hurt a little too easily, and this leads to more suffering. Thirdly, we have raga, which is attachments. So we have now identified with our identity, with our ego. And now we become to attach ourselves with our surroundings, with our belongings, with our spiritual practices, because those can be traps as well. We begin to identify with our thought patterns. We begin to identify with our story, our own paradigm. And then when things happen to us that don't exactly go along with our story, it can cause some discomfort. So that leads us to asmita. Asmita is aversion. So we have now identified with our self, our assumed self. We've identified with our surroundings and our assumed life and existence. And now we've begun to get a real small comfort bubble, comfort zone. I don't know about you, but for myself, very little growth has happened within said comfort zone. So with asmita, or excuse me, not asmita, with the other one I was talking about, Dvesa. With Dvesa, we have aversion. So an aversion to step outside our comfort zone, an aversion to step into the unknown. And that leads into abhinivesa, which is fear, ultimately fear of death. If you believe that this whole thing is going to end the moment you die and your heart stops beating, that can cause some issues. That can cause some fear. That can cause some real clinging to this existence. So those are the 5 kleshas. So we have people start to journal about those and figure out what really they're holding on to that is causing different parts of suffering in their existence. And that helps start to narrow in on an intention. It's really good to have an intention when you go into a medicine experience, but a perfectly good intention can be, my intention is to surrender to whatever the hell happens. That is a fine intention. That's usually my intention. So that's what we're doing before the experience, alongside a lengthy screening process. So with 5-MeO-DMT, if you're sitting with a facilitator, make sure they're screening you mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. There's medications that are contraindicative. There are certain mental disorders that are contraindicative. There are certain things that will really help determine your dosage and how to work safely with you. So the screening is very important. After all that is the medicine experience, the day of, the lovely reckoning. And if by that time you don't have a little bit of pre-flight anxiety, something's wrong. It is very healthy to be scared before one of these experiences. The mind loves to fear the unknown, and this is the big unknown. So it is okay to have pre-flight anxiety. It's okay to have jitters. But that's what all this preparation is for, is to get a little bit more comfortable. It's impossible to get completely comfortable with it. Well, I'm not going to say impossible, but expect a little iffiness. What is the medicine experience like? Well, many of us have tasted it. But for those who haven't, I'm going to break it down into 3 general classes of sitters. We have our Buddha sitters, are just meditative people who lie through it and just really surrender to the experience. And you may see some vibrations, some tremors, some spasms, but generally they're just still and just go through the experience. Then we have our dynamic movers and shakers. And this can be anything from angelic, graceful, ballerina-like movement to full-on thrashing and screaming and red face. But I always like to say that the outer experience does not necessarily represent the inner experience with this medicine. There's a fellow that sat with us quite a few times, and every single time he's under, he just goes ballistic. I mean, all over the place. And he's a 6-foot-something guy, so limbs everywhere, just really going for it. So we're using everything soft, all the pillows to keep him in the center, to keep him safe. He's getting curse words out too, veins popping out. Wow. And I asked him one day, after I'd seen him do that about 3 or 4 times, I said, I've got to ask you, what are you going through in there? What's happening? He says, oh, it's just so blissful. I feel like I'm falling backwards into marshmallow clouds. It's like, okay. Because it looks like he's fighting the royal legions of hell. So I always like to let people know that if you are sitting in a circle and it's your first time and someone just straight loses it, don't worry. It doesn't mean they're having a bad one. So it could. So, then we have the primal screamer. The primal screamer is when that nada brahma, that primal sound current, that frequency of creation, that primordial om becomes one's everything, and they erupt in a roar. It is humbling, to say the least. And again, does not necessarily mean they are having a bad one. It could be the best experience of their life. It could also be orgasmic screams. The godgasm it's a thing. It's real. And actually, as of late, we have discovered a new type of sitter too. The oracle sitter, we are calling them. And that's when you have a sitter who just taps right into some divine energy and just begins transmitting knowledge. They'll just be laying there and just dropping knowledge. So it's really cool. You just get to sit on a cosmic satsang or a lecture for a little while they just channel amazingness. So, that being said, the 5-MeO experience is not all roses and strawberries. It can be extremely scary. If the mind starts to resist and puts up a fight to this one, it will get beat to shit, dragged over coals, and stripped naked. It is, it's a strong one. And those with a very strong mind may try to really duke it out with this one. Surrender. Continually surrender is the only thing I can say. But we also have to remember a challenging experience does not mean it was a waste. It always has things to show us. 5-MeO, DMT is by no means a panacea. There's no cure-all. It gives us our homework. And nothing gives us proper homework like a rough experience on medicine. So,
10 minutes.
They do happen. Thank you. After our experience, what are we going to do with it? We have just taken all of infinity and become that, and now have navigated ourselves into a tiny human sheath again, and now have to go into our daily life. And remember, those filters start to go back up pretty immediately, and we are quickly losing the essence of what that was on occasion. Unless we're having constant reactivations, which I'll get into a little later. But integration is how. Integration is how we draw this experience and make it more than just a peak experience. So again, I use the system of yoga. As I said, Patanjali was kind enough to draw out this path into an 8-limbed process. And I must say that we have to keep in mind that it is not 8 steps to reach a destination, because samadhi is not a destination. It is not something we achieve. It is our baseline consciousness. It is our state of being. This is more a game of removing the things that allow us to witness and understand our true nature. So, the first limb, 2 limbs really to go together, are Yama and Niyama. Yama are self-regulating behaviors, and there's a few of each of these. First we have ahimsa, and I'm going to go through these fairly quickly. Ahimsa is non-violence. Non-violence to all sentient beings, non-violence to yourself, including thoughts. Satya, truthfulness. Be truth to yourself. Be true to those around you. Asteya, non-stealing. Don't steal from others. Don't rob yourself of time to take care and pamper yourself when you need it. Things like that. Brahmacharya. Brahmacharya traditionally was translated and understood as celibacy or abstinence. This is 2019. It's a little different these days. We're more calling it mindful restraint of one's sexual energy. Let's call it at that. We'll meet halfway. Just don't give it away. Aparigraha, which is non-covetousness. So it doesn't mean don't have drives. It doesn't mean don't want to move forward. But don't waste energy coveting something that isn't already in your life. Don't waste your time coveting the neighbor on the mat next to you in yoga classes, physical practice, because they've got more flexible legs than you do. Just like that. Then we have niyama. Niyama are personal practices for your inner world. We have saucha, which is cleanliness. Cleanliness within, cleanliness in diet, cleanliness in your surroundings. I don't know if anyone noticed. I just noticed over the past 5 or 10 years that when I really clean my house, I can actually think a little better. If my mom tried to tell me it's a few points, but it took a while to... Then we have santosha. Santosha is contentment. This is not to be confused with complacency. As I said, it is perfectly healthy to have drives and desires and to have direction. But don't forget to stop and smell the roses. Don't forget that this journey is the destination. We are here to experience every bit of this. The good, the bad, the boring, the hectic, the crazy. All of it is it. That is the point of life, in my opinion. Is all of it. Is all of it. So, be content, but always know we're moving forward. Tapas. Tapas are disciplines. Your physical yoga practice can be tapas. Your daily meditation can be tapas. Different cleansing practices can be tapas. Just disciplines to keep the body strong and healthy. But the next two are the probably two most important, I feel, for integration of psychedelics. Svadhyaya, self-study, constantly being aware of your emotional and thought process. Watch your thoughts. Remember, we are not the mind. We are the awareness behind the mind that gets to watch it. Do not judge yourself for having thoughts. We can understand we have thoughts that don't serve us. Let them go. But constantly watch. Study yourself and get to see how you tick. It is one of the quickest ways to really grow. And remember, after this medicine and many other medicines, we're in a state of neuroplasticity. So if we catch ourselves in a thought pattern that doesn't really reflect our highest God experience we just had, it is okay. But catch yourself in that thought pattern. Realize it doesn't serve you, and shift, and you will physically build new neural bridges and shift the way you think. A new self. Our last niyama is Ishvara Pranidhan, God consciousness. Always being aware of infinite. And of course, this word God comes with a lot of baggage. When I say God, I come from a Vedantic non-dual background where at source point there is, as I spoke about, no object-subject relationship, and everything is pure consciousness. In yogic philosophy, this would be Brahman. So always being conscious of this. After the yamas and niyamas, we have asana. Asana is the physical practice of yoga, the physical postures. This is to open up the nervous system, strengthen the nervous system, open up the body to sit comfortably in meditation for long periods of time, energetically open up the body through the nadis, which are approximately 72,000 pathways of energy within and around the body. Then we have pratyahara. Pratyahara is withdrawal of the five senses, the external senses, and bringing them within. This is the beginning of meditation. This is tuning out what you're hearing, tuning out what you're seeing, tuning out all sense, and really listening to within. Five. Once we've cultivated that, and that takes a while. These are not quick little steps here. Once we've cultivated that, we have dharana, which is one-pointed focus on one thing. So this could be a Tradika meditation, if you're gazing at a piece of sacred geometry. This could be gazing at a candle. This could be many, many different things, but one-pointed focus, keeping one image in your mind or one thought in your mind and staying on there, really harnessing control of the mind. That leads us to dhyana. Once we have harnessed that one-pointed focus, we begin to open up to a pure open flow. We begin to blur the walls between us and that which separates us. And we come into dhyana, which is basically meditation. Meditation is a lengthy process and never ends. But through this flow, this meditation, as these walls begin to blur that separate us, we remember samadhi, total realization of that which we are, is, were, will be, all that good stuff. So in conclusion, I like to stress that, yes, I feel that yoga is an amazing, amazing lens through which to do this work. I feel that these maps are very, very cohesive with this kind of medicine. At the end of the day, though, it's just a story. It is just a paradigm. All spiritual practices are just paradigms. There are many paths up the mountain, all to the same place. Different paths are going to work for different people. What works for me may not work for someone else. We all have had different life experiences, different what we call samskaras, or energetic imprints. So, we as humans love to get attached to our means of liberation. We love to decide that, this lineage is the correct one. We see it in the yoga community. Ashtangis call Hatha yogis lazy. Kundalini yogis call Ashtangis and Hatha yogis fake yogis. It's ridiculous. But we all love to just cling to that which has liberated us, or that which we found salvation through. So remember, we all find our salvation through many different things. Ramana Maharishi likened spiritual practices to a thorn used to remove other thorns. So use them as a tool. But remember, at the end of the day, we have to let go of that too to find total immersion. Because what is there, the infinite, is beyond what we can imagine and beyond what any spiritual practice or religion can even begin to understand. But they all help. Yeah. So, this 5-MeO DMT experience, in my opinion, is an awakening experience, an enlightenment experience. Is it a full, lasting awakening experience? No, usually not. It is what we would call a non-abiding awakening. But a non-abiding awakening is a catalyst. with whether you know it or not, things are happening leading you towards a lasting, abiding awakening. And there are tools that you can use to really integrate this into your life and to get there and find that liberation from the confines of the mind. So if you want to learn more, itsallsource.com is my website. We love to do fun stuff. We do workshops. We host retreats in Jamaica and have one coming this October. And it is, we call them Samadhi Retreats. It's myself, my beautiful wife here. Stand up and wave a hand. And that's Miss Mary. And our brother, and our brother Corey Chase. And we'll have a good time. They're always a lot of fun. They're in the rainforest section of Jamaica. The medicine is legal there. We've used this place a lot. We'll be eating Rastafari-style Ital food. Corey, our partner, is from Jamaica. I'm Haitian, but live in the Virgin Islands most of the time. It's always good to bring people back to the Caribbean and really get into those vibes. And yeah, it's beautiful. So if you want more information on that, come say hi. If you just want to say hi, come say hi. I'd love to meet you.